Welcome back, guys, to another video. So we're continuing with the series, right? Our YouTube backend clone. So here, what do we have here? We've finished this video handling feature whereby we upload, delete, update, and stream the video, right? So now we want to deal with user interaction and video performance, and hopefully we can reach also the user interactions to channels, right? So now, before we get started with this thing, guys, if you are keen to learning about backend development, consider subscribing because I'll be releasing bangers each and every day related to backend development, right? So right now, what we'll be dealing with, and this will be on a much basic level, right? Because here you realize that with likes on YouTube, I cannot like a video more than once. So with what we did here, setting this as a number, we are somewhat are not doing this appropriately, because what can happen here is if this is a number, there's no way we can know that there is someone that liked the video. But then what we can do is change this. But then for now, because it's just for demo purposes and everything, the idea should be the same even if you made this as an array of objects, so on and so forth, guys. So I'm just going to keep it simple and basic with regards to likes and dislike, and maybe you might learn something with regards to Mongoose queries, so to increment numbers, right? So I'll just keep it as it is. But then you know that YouTube does check, I'm sure it does check that you can only like once, not more than once, or dislike, so on and so forth, right? And you cannot like and dislike. So those are other things that we can, if you guys are interested for me to change this thing up and have that pre-checking and all those things, definitely we can look into that as we progress with this build, right? So, but then for now we'll keep it as basic. So we can say like feature, we can say request, a response, and then with that said, what we can do now is we get the video ID, right? We say video underscore ID is equal to a request dot params dot id, and then what we can do is we say video model dot find one and update, and we find one by underscore id, which is that video id. And then what then we do next is we want to write a query that will increment our what is this one, that will increment our likes. So we can come say here inc, like that, and we tell it which document path it should increment, and it's likes. Is it likes or like? It's likes, right? So we say likes and we tell it to increment by 1. So this is our query that we'll be using. Hopefully it does work. And then now what then we then do now is if we are going to return this document back, we say news equals to true, which I thought we will, and then we'll take in an error, and that will be our callback function and the document, right? And then what then we do is we now check if there is any error, right? And then we return the response dot status of 500.json, and we said network error, and we say failed to like video, right? But if that's said, we can now return a response.status of 200.json, and then we tell this thing video liked, right? So now we have that working, right? And we are liking that properly. So if my memory says more, just quick, let me check if there's that is that decrement within Mongoose, if I remember quite well, because we want to do the same thing with regards to, okay, for now let's just do this for ink, right? And then we can refer video liked, and then now we have that like, so we can test it up. Go to our Thunder client, go to your request, and then we will definitely need Mongoose. Let me open up my Google Chrome. And then once that's done, what I need to do is I need to go to MongoDB, and then let's see, we want to sign in. and then let's wait for this. Okay, and then we use Google. And then that, right? So let's wait for this thing. So I'm curious if Mongoose has a dollar. While doing that, I doubt Mongoose has a dollar, a dollar DC, DEC, like the ink. I doubt it does, but then I'm just curious. But then if it doesn't, we can just increment by a negative number. I'm sure we can just increment by a negative number. As you can see, increment by a negative number, right? So I thought as much. So we can go to our browse collection. We want to get a video whereby we'll get its ID and then try and increment the values, right? So here, it's just more or less of a basic way of adding likes, blah, 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 so on and so forth. But then we could have added pre-checks whereby we first check if this user had liked, so on and so forth. So we'll just keep it basic. Very, very, very basic. So now we come in here, we grab this ID. This is the video ID. We only have one video. And then we'll say HTTP localhost. And we say to this thing port 5000 /API/video -like. And then we give that one there. So now let's craft this URL. So we go back here. And we go to route, video route. So there's a lot of routes happening here. So say router.get, and then we say /API/video, and I said -like, /video -like, and then /parameter ID, and then we pass in the request, pass in the response. Do it like that, and then controller.like, and then we pass in that like the response and the request, right? So now that should be registered in, so I can come back to here, my terminal, npm run dev, and then let's see that working. Hopefully it does work and we get this thing to increment the values. So now I can come in here. Let me just put this laptop on charger. While putting this thing on charger, we'll send this request and then see. So let's send this request. It says video liked. So it seems as if it worked. Hopefully it did successfully like this thing. And then what we want to do is we'll be going to Mongoose, not Mongoose, but the MongoDB to actually check if this video was really liked, because that's the main important thing, right? This video getting liked. Right. So now let me just put this on charger and bingo, there we go. Right. So now let's go to MongoDB and let's see if we did increment this like, and it's working just fine. So let's see. So we can see the like got added, right? And it's working just well. So with regards to this dislike, so the dislike, it's similar to this, but then we'd want to, we say dislike, we'd want to add by a negative number, right? So now let's register that dislike. So I can just copy that and bring that there and say dislike with the ID. Should keep it like that, it's fine. And then let's dislike, and then let's send. So I send that request and it would say video liked. So let's change this to video disliked, because this route is for disliking. So that's one thing that we had to change there. And then let's see, right, so we have that dislike, and then we can dislike one more time. And then right now, why is it saying video liked? Hold on. Why is this thing saying video liked? Oh, because I never changed this thing. It's running the. I'm sorry for that. So it's running that like method, and I believe right now we should be having we should be having 3 likes, I believe, right? Because of I used the wrong method, because I just copied and pasted and then used the wrong method. As you can see, we have 3 likes, right? So now let's run on the dislike. We should get 1 dislike, video disliked, right? So let's refresh that. Let's see. So this is way much more easier for me, because I would have needed to create more than 1 account. So to make pre-checks on checking if this user is the one. Oh yeah. So remember, I didn't change here. So it minus so here on the likes, it should be dislikes, right? And then we add the dislikes by 1. And I believe model is dislike. Yeah, dislikes, right? So we want to increment the dislikes, and we also saw that if we add with a minus, it will subtract, right? So now I can come back here on my Thunder client and then run that. We should get video disliked. So if I refresh that, our video should be disliked. Right, so we have 1 dislikes. Right, so now everything is working well with regards to likes and dislikes. So now what we want to do next is we want to handle this comment. Right, so now with regards to comments, let's come back here. So we clean this thing up for now, and we want to be able to comment to a video, right? So now let's come in here, say comment, and then we say a request, a response, right? So now with that said, how then do we handle this thing, right? So obviously this is something that the data is shown as to who liked, not who liked, who commented, so on and so forth, to the people there on YouTube when you see this. So this is something that I will also handle appropriately, because we also have the array. So with that said, what will happen is when a person likes, obviously the person will be authenticated, right? And that's something that we need to run. Since we have the authenticate middleware, it's something that you need to add here, because a user has to be authenticated. But then let's do that in the comment section, right? For this comment feature, I mean. So now what then we do is, we know that we have the token of the person who's trying to comment, right? So we say request dot headers, not request dot headers, request dot token, because already that middleware will run, and then we have that token. That's number 1. So number 2, we want to find this user. We say const user is equals to await, and we will say user model. I have not exported that model, right? Not exported, but then imported it here. So let's import this model here. I can just copy that, do that, and then say user model, and then change that to user model. So now what we want to do is, we want to say const token, and then we say user model dot find one, and we want to find one by underscore id, which is the token dot underscore id, right? So this is what we want to do, and we want to async this function because we are waiting, right? So now we found the user, right? And within the, we'll use formidable, we'll say const form is equal to new incoming form, and then we say form dot pass, and on that form dot pass we pass in the request, and that will potentially throw an error, fields or files. So we want to handle the potential error. If there is an error, we return a response.status of 500.json. And with that said, we say network error failed to comment on video, right? And you must realize that these comments must be nested. So say for example, I comment, another person can comment on my comment, right? And that comment that was commented on my comment can also be, someone can also comment on the other person's comment. So with that said, what then would happen with regards to this comment, right, is this comment would be, would have to reference with its own model, from what I understand. Might not be the best approach, but then this is how we're gonna handle it. We're gonna be having a comment, excuse me, we'll have a comment model. We'll say comment dot model dot js, right? And this comment model, because embedding it would be a tedious task, eh? Embedding will be a tedious task, very tedious task. So now what I want to do is we can come in here and say import, and we say that from mongoose we need schema and model, and we also need to keep track of the likes of this comment. So say const comment schema is equal to new schema, and this would have a owner of the comment, which is of type schema dot types dot object id, and then this will reference the user. Secondly, we have the comment, which is a type of string, and it is required true. Comment text is required to create new comment, right? And secondly, what then we need is this likes of this thing. So a person can like, and then it will be a number. By default, it is 0. And we have dislikes, which is a type of number, and by default it is 0. And however, remember this is the comment, right? So we need a replies, because people can reply to this comment. We need replies, which is a type of schema dot types, and it should be an array. Be careful about this. It will be an array, and add that comma there. It will be an array of type schema dot types dot object id, and it will ref what, I'll say comment, because I'll name this model as comment. So here, what am I saying? Because this is the nesting, that a person can reply to this, and you realize that a person can reply to whatever that this person replies to. This is the nesting that we're talking to. So it can go as deep as you want it to, and the best way to handle that is we need its own schema, right? And then model itself, and I can come here and say comment model is equals to new, not new man, model, and we'll say comment and give it the comment schema. So that should be it. So now this means that changes what we have with regards to videos, right? So video has comment, which is a type of array. So this means that this thing is a type of array, yes, but then this type of array is a type of schema dot types dot object id, and that will ref what, the comment, if that makes sense. So this means that we will definitely upload another video so that we don't have any clashes within our Mongo DB. So if I just to reiterate, so this comment, right, a person can comment here, right, and this video, but then other people can comment on that other comment, right? So now this, how then would this work? Because firstly, when we comment on the video, we're not replying. Those are two different things. When I comment, it will be directly embedded here, but then when I reply, we're coming to this one because I'm replying to the comment. So two different things. So I come in here on my comment, we pass that, and then we'll say const the comment that we get, right? And already we have the user that is trying to comment, and we should also get the video that you're trying to comment to. Let's say video underscore id that you're trying to comment to, and that will be from fields, right? So now if none of those things are available, right, And then why should I stick with this thing or this person? Continue this. I can just say return a response.status of 400.json and say all fields are required to create a comment. Right. So now with that said, we have that. Now what we can do is we want to comment to this video. We want to just first create the comment and then push in the ID of that comment to the video ID, if that makes sense. So what do I mean by this is we want to import this comment model, import comment model, go to models and comment model, and come on, did I export this comment model? I didn't export this, that's why. So now I can say export that comment model, and then I can control space, get that. Right. So we scroll down, and then we want to comment, right? So first thing we want to add this comment, we'll say const new comment is equals to new comment model, and there's the owner, right? And the owner is of token dot underscore ID. Remember that is what we get from our middleware, right? And then the next thing that we do is once we have the owner, let's think. No, we don't have to think, we can just go to the model. We need the comment, right? We can just literally go to the model, and then the comment is basically that comment. I can just add it like that. And then as you can see, we're not really sanitizing any information. And spoiler alert, guys, I'll be doing a crash course on NodeJS security. You can see all this is basically vulnerable to a lot of things, right? So just a spoiler alert. So now we need to create or save this video. You can say saved comment. I don't know why am I saying video. You can't saved comment. And we say await new comment dot save. Right. And since we are waiting within this callback function, I have to async within this callback function, right? And then once we have that comment all done, what then do we do? We need to say video model dot find one and update, and we want to update by underscore ID, and the video we already have it, which is video underscore ID. What then do we want to do is we want to push to this array that we have, right? And excuse me, which is the array. If we go to this video, we want to push to this comment, right? So if my memory serves me well, we'll come in here, say set, and then we'll say push, and we want to push two comments. We want to push saved comment dot underscore ID. If my memory serves me well, that is the right query that we'll be using in order to push to that array, which is the which is the comment field, right? So I hope that is proper. But then if it is not the proper query, then most definitely it is something that we will definitely handle. So it shouldn't be that much of a hassle. It is our job at the end of the day to debug and fix problems, right? So I don't know if I should set, but then let's just run push first, not pull. You can just say push. I believe it should be like this for some odd reason. Say comment and then saved comment dot underscore ID. I believe it should be like this directly. And then now we're not yet done. We need to, if you will be returning this thing again, like I said, you can add options of true, and then we get the error and the doc, which is the doc that would be updated directly on the fly. And then we say if error, and then you return a response.status of 500.json, and we say network error failed to failed to save comment to video. And then if that's not the case, we return a response.status of 200.json, and we say video. I would say comment successfully made. Hopefully my English is proper there. Now, once we have done that, we have saved and then pushed the comment to its relevant place. So I can come here to my mongoose, delete the video that I have because the video is having its schema was different to what we just since we updated. So let's delete the video, and then let's come here to this video model, and that is the only, and then views. With regards to views, okay, no problem. So that is something that we'll deal with, but then let's focus on comment right now. So let's create a new video. My server's up, hopefully, yep. So now let's upload a new video. Come in here, let's not worry about that other one. So post. I have a video, hopefully, NodeJS tutorial. Let's upload that, and it should work. Hopefully we don't get any bugs, because on the last video everything was working just fine, right? So we have that, and then we should get this video model up and running within here on our MongoDB as well. So let's check that, and then once we check that, and then we can get going with regards to commenting and all those things, right? So we have a video, as we can see. There we go. And that is the video Node.js tutorial, right? So now we want this video ID, because this is the one that we use this ID to comment to, right? So I can just close this one, create new request, go to my Thunder client, create new request. So for now, we'll come here, form, and then we say video underscore ID, paste that ID, and then say comment, and say this is the best tutorial ever, right? And change that route. We need to expose it as well, so we haven't exposed it. We have comment there. Let's go to video routes and then expose that route. We go to video route, say router.post, and that will be /API/video -comment, and then we say request response, and then we say controller.comment, passing the request, passing that response, right? And then now what we then do is we also need to add the authentication, because only an authenticated user can comment, right? It's very important, only authenticated user. So now if I come in here, say http localhost dash, not dash, but then colon 5000 API /video -comment. I believe that if I change this to post, I shouldn't get past this thing. My middleware should hit me, right? So now let's sign in. Let's go to sign in, and then we sign in so that we can get our JWT token, and then copy that, and then bring this to our headers, which is x-auth-token, and then paste that there, right? So now if I have that, now this should work in my understanding. Let's test it out. So if I send this, let's see if we get, so it says network error, failed to save to comment. Now why did we get that? So let's come and see. So we go to our video controller, and I believe it's this network error, failed to save to comment. So now let's console log this error that we get in console log error, right? So we can see this error ourselves, and I believe the comment should be created. As you can see, this is the best tutorial, but then it failed to save here, right? That's what it failed to do. And let's also validate that within my video model, I did say my comments are schema types of ID, and then should ref comment, and the comment model, I did say it is comment, right? So now let's see the error that we're getting, so we debug this, right? I send that the request again, I should get that error. So now it says cast to object ID failed. So we're getting a cast error. Argument must be paused. Okay, so I believe type object ID. Okay, so I believe this thing is because the underscore ID that. Okay, let's see what's happening. So cast error, cast to object ID failed for value that object ID type string it path underscore model for video. We go to controller. So that saved comment dot underscore ID. So let's see what this error is, right? Pretty much sure that a lot of people have come across this. So we go to Uncle Google and cast error. So we don't have to run all this. I believe that should be more sufficient. So let's see what's happening. So mongoose find by ID method casts the ID parameter to type of that. That doesn't happen. Only to resolve that is so if ID it's a valid object ID proceed. Okay, cool. So let's run this regex, let's see. But then that doesn't change my problem, I believe. It wouldn't. So if ID, let's say here, let me check here. So if video ID, if video underscore ID dot match that, let's console log that it is an object ID, I guess. Then I can find by ID. So console.log say valid video ID. I don't know why it's bugging on with me because I've always also on the other one we got that video ID. Unless okay, let's just try it out, guys. Let's see. So we have that running, and then let's go to Thunder client, run that comment, and then network error. That's what we expected. Anywho, so we come in here. So we're not getting our console log, right? So let me add that else to show that okay, it's not else console.log invalid ID, right? Let's even clean up the server to have a clean slate so we can see all those errors nice and properly. It should be npm run dev, and then run this, come back here, we run that, we expect that error, and then invalid ID. So we're getting here invalid ID even though it's a valid ID. So here how to convert string to valid object ID mongoose, right? So this is basically what we need. But then I have a huge feeling that okay, let's just go this to this one. Okay, bingo, there we go. So I can use this mongoose type object ID and then wrap it around that. Right, hopefully that would be my solution. So let me just copy that, and then we come back here, and then we don't need this regex. So unnecessary from my understanding. I can say const ID. We don't even have to just ID. Change this to const, and then run this video ID, and switch this to ID. And then I believe now, because this one we're using this one from the saved, this one should be in the one saved. This one shouldn't be the one causing the errors. It should be the other one on top, which it didn't cause when we made the likes and dislikes. Weird enough, eh? It didn't cause any, unless maybe it's because it was coming from our params. Could that have been an issue that maybe when it comes from params, it doesn't have or change anything to it? I don't know, guys. Comment down below and tell me if that is the case. So here we have hold on. So we comment, right? So we get the token and then we get the user, right? And then we get the owner of, we didn't even need to get this user because we have the token ID, we have the ID of this user, right? So we didn't need that. Let's see, because we're not even using that user object, so it's just unnecessary waste of memory. All right, let's send this request. Let's see, send that request, and then we should work now. If it doesn't, it's our job to debug this thing. All right, so let's see what happens. So we're getting mongoose is not defined, right? So that is just my bad there. So I'll say import mongoose from mongoose, right? Clean that, and then we should get this not to work. It's not a problem, but then there's our server running now, right? We should get that to run, and then let's send that a request, and then hopefully now everything works. And then our terminal argument parsed, buffer of string 12 bytes, a string with 24 blah blah blah. Okay, so let's throw this ID via params. I think that is what's needed here, because on the other one we never had problems on the top level when we're throwing this ID. For example, here we're getting it from we're getting from params. It never gave any errors when we're trying to make our queries and everything. It's weird what's happening here. So I can just say const video ID is equals to request come on, request.params.id, and then come here and remove that, and we can still keep that, and then we close that, and then we replace this, and then we need to come to our routes, whereby we now say that colon ID, and we come here, we go to our body, and then oh yeah, this error was coming because of this, guys. So okay, let's just revert control Z. So that was just a silly mistake on our end, on my end. Kill that. Coming from video ID, have that. I don't need this, and then I'll bring in this video ID. And if you guys see this request here, I have this object ID variable, not variable but the name. So now let's see now, right? So it says 404 because it was expecting a placeholder. Do that, clean up that. So that was just something that I overlooked, because now we went even high and low for just something silly. So now we can send this. Hopefully now it should work. Hopefully now this thing should work, literally. So I send that comment successfully made. So it's because we had added the other part object ID. Silly mistake on my end. So now I can come here to this comments thingy here. We should have tons of comments, but then what we're interested in is here by the videos, right? We should see the object ID. There we go. So we have that. So now a person can reply to this comment, right? So what do I mean by this? So now we have to reply to this comment. So now let me just, so I don't know which one. I think the fifth one. Let me go to this videos, and then on the videos, the one ending with FDB2. So we go to comment. That's the one that we want to deal with. We want to nest to it, and I'm sure by now you'd know that you can nest also to the other one. So we'll come in here, we grab this one, right? So the same thing applies, the same thing applies with regards to replying, but then the difference is now you're not pushing to the videos part, because you're replying to a comment, not commenting to a video. So we can say reply, comment, say request, response. Right. So now we get basically the token is required. We don't. Okay, let's see. Token is equals to request because we need to know the person. So say request the token. We need to know who's commenting, and then what else do we need? We need formidable to get the, let's say form is equals to new incoming form, and then we say form dot pass request, and then error fields and files. Right. So now we come back here and then we say if there is an error, we return a response dot status of 500 dot JSON, and then we say network error failed to reply to comment. And if that's the case, we now say const. If it passes that, we want to get the comment, and we want to get the video ID, video underscore ID, not video ID, but in the comment ID at which you are replying to, which is coming from fields. Right. So if none of this, comment blah blah and that, and then we see return a response dot status of 400 dot JSON, which will now say all fields are required to create or to reply to comment. Right. So now when we pass that, what we want to do is we want to save this comment as well, right? So we'll say new comment is equals to new comment model, whereby there's that owner, and the owner is the token dot underscore ID, and there's the comment, right, which is like that. All right. So now we save this comment, we say const saved comment. So the same process, await, and then we say new comment dot save, right? And once we save using await, when we use asynchronous, we also have to async there. And now once we have saved this, we now have to push this comment where? To the replies. So that's where the difference lies here. So how then do we do this? We now say comment model dot find one and update, and want to update find one by underscore ID, which we got, which is the comment ID, and then we want to say dollar push, and where do we want to push? We want to push to replies, and we want to push what? The saved comment dot underscore ID, and standard procedure of adding options, we say new true, and then that returns a callback function with the error and a doc. It's alt z error doc, and then we say if there is an error, we return a response dot status of 500 dot JSON, and then we say network error failed to reply to comment. And then if that's the case, then it paused, and then we've replied successfully, say 200.json, and then we say reply made successfully. Right. So now that should be more or less of it. This should work. So now let's expose this reply, and then I can just copy this, paste that there, and then we say a reply video. No, this is comment a reply. We'll say reply dash comment, and then we first want to authenticate standard procedure, but then let's make sure that we change this function to reply comment. Right. So now I can come in here, and let me just copy and paste this due to my laziness. I'll just copy and paste that, and then we want to reply, and then let's not forget the ID of where we want to reply to, which is this one. So I'll come back here, replace that, and then we'll come in here, you're not capping. This is the best tutorial. So now this should work hopefully. So I can now come back here, send that, all fields are required. This should be comment ID, comment underscore ID, not the video ID. So now we say comment ID and then that reply made successfully, right? So if I come back or refresh this, on my comments now I should have replies embedded to it, right? Or reference there because we're using references. And that nesting should now work because now I can reply to this other one. So if I come to replies, okay, interesting. Okay, interesting. It didn't add. How interesting. Let's go to our controllers. And what I suspect is probably maybe this. Let's go to our model. Grab this document name. Come back here. I believe it's the same, hey? And then why didn't that work? We have the comment underscore ID. And I gave the comment underscore ID. Oh, I'm checking replies of this one. Instead, I should be checking replies of this one. I'm sorry, guys. It really did work. I was checking the ID of the reply because remember, it's also a comment, right? So I was checking replies here. And as you can see, I was replying to this tutorial is the best tutorial. And then we have this one replying, you're not capping, this is the best tutorial. So we know that this nesting is working. And then here I can reply to this one, so on and so forth. Right. So this is how basically this whole nesting would work with regards to commenting, so on and so forth. Right. And then finally, we need to be able to send back this data, right? So go to video controller and we need to get this comment, right? So how would we get this comment? So let's see. We come in here, say get comments. So basically, when we get the video should be attached with its comments and everything, right? When we get the video, let's say get video because it is the video. Say get video, right? And that is the video data because, say for example, we're running on a React, right? So a React would have its own component. Say for example, this is its own component that is getting the video itself. But then now it wants to display the details. It would also have another component which can also send in a HTTP request to get the video details, right? So I can now say request response, and then we want to get this data, right? So we expect the ID. I can say video underscore ID is equals to request dot params dot ID. And then now what then we do is we now try and get this thing, so async, and then we say const data is equals to await, and we say video model dot find one, and that one we find it by underscore ID, which is a video ID. And then what then we do is we return, and first thing is we also want to, should be this kind of bracket underscore ID dash, not dash but then colon that. And the next thing that we want to do is remember that if I go to video, there's this comment that we want to populate because it's a reference, right? So I'll come in here, say that, and then we say dot populate, and then we want to populate this comment, right? And then that will replace this as schema IDs and make them actual comments, right? The comment objects that we have, if that makes sense. So now we return a response.status of 200.json and we return the data, right? So now that should work. Let's expose this controller to our routes, and then we come back here, we say router.get, and what do you want to get? We say / API video dash details, and I expect that ID. So request response, and then controller dot get video, and then that response. Right, so let's try and get this video ID. We go to video, and once we get there, we get this video ID, and we don't need to populate the owner, do we? Let's not do that for now. So now I can go to my Thunder client, and HTTP localhost the colon, what am I saying? Oh, it's the same dash API / video - details. Go to route, video - details, and then / the ID. Now that should work. Let's send that. 44 not found. Route. Video - details. Localhost 5000 / API / video - details. Now why is this thing saying 44 not found? Cannot find. Is my server running? My server is restarting. Let's run that. It's weird. Why is it not giving me something that's working? Let's just come here, copy that, and there's no clashing thing is here. Yeah, there's nothing clashing. So I can come in here, replace this, and replace that. Right, and there's my server running. My server is running. I send that request, and we get the data, as you can see. All right, so the comments are getting populated. But then now, how then do we? I'm trying to think. There's something that I've never really came across, because you can see the data is now populated for this is the best tutorial, but then now the replies has to be populated as well. So let's check this thing out. How to populate nested object in MongoDB. Right. So now we come back here. That should help us. So we give you. So we find, and then okay, let's see. So there's page, right? There's pages, and then there's page. Interesting. So components and pages. So pages was this, and also populating components. So my thing here that I have is, okay, let's copy this. Very, very interesting. Hopefully I understood that. So we copy that. We want to make this thing work with our problem. Have this, right? So this person had pages that they wanted to populate, and this pages had other things that they wanted to populate on the model component. Right. So from what I understand with regards to this, right, where do we come? Come here. Right. So we want to have this path, and the path is comments. Right. I believe it's comments. Let's go to our model. Should be comments. Go to video model comments. Exactly like that. However, I can now say comma, and then say populate, and then give it a path of replies, and the model is comments. That is comment. So hopefully this works, guys. Hopefully this works. So I can now kill this, remove this, but then bring back my curly bracket. Hopefully this worked. If I understood it properly, if I understood that solution properly, never really nested. So we're always learning new things ourselves, right? So now we come back there. And then as you can see, unedited things, everything is done right in front of you. Let's send this thing and then let's see if that really worked. That would be nice if it worked. Schema hasn't been registered for model comments. Huh? Missing schema error. What is this thing saying? Oh, my schema is not comment, but then it's comment, I believe. My schema is comment, not comment. Interesting. Right. So that was just a slight mistake by me. Let's see if this works now. So we wait for MongoDB connection. And we get that MongoDB connection. And then I send that, and then we should have things working. There we go. There we go. As you can see, we have the comments, which is this comment, and then the replies, they're also populated as well. Right. And you realize that we can reply to this one and so on and so forth based on the ID, so on and so forth. So this is how we'd have our nested comments. And then if I were to try and explain this, as first things first, we give the path of at which we want to populate for this model. And then forward, we can now add another populate whereby we give the path of this one, whereby now it's a replies, and then the model at which it should look into, right? So I believe that's how, and also look into this more myself. But then that's how this thing we work with regards to nesting of this populate method. All right, so we can get videos and the video details, and it's a reply, so on and so forth, blah, 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 blah. Right. So with regards to the likes and dislikes, that should be trivial. I will leave that for you guys to do so that you also have some, bit of exercise. Right. So now we are able to deal with those data like dislikes, nesting of comments, and everything. Right. So now we can deal with regards to our video performance data, count by geolocation, so on and so forth. Right. So what we need to do is, we know that when we add views, we need a middleware that will run, and then before that it will increment the number of views, right? So however, the browser or the client will give us an IP address, right? So we'll make it as basic as possible because we're not dealing much with the front end, but then we'll make it as basic as possible to replicate client giving us an IP address, and then from there we can do countless number of things with that IP address. Right. So now, what then do I mean by this? So if I go to my videos, there's this views thing, right? So this views will be an object, array of objects, and then the array of objects will be what is this? We'll add. An object will have the person that watched the video, or we can add by location, the IP addresses basically. So the IP address will be the views. Basically, yeah, it'll be the views. We'll add IP addresses within this array. It doesn't have to be an array of objects. So what then do I mean by this? Remember when we try and get the video, we give the file path, right? So making it basic, on the other end here, we'll add an IP address, right? So that means that we'll configure our route. So what do I mean by this? Let's get dummy IP addresses. Dummy IP address. Right. So now we'll use this thing to generate IP addresses, random IP addresses. And on a real life situation, a browser would be giving us these things based on where the user is, so on and so forth, which is not really complicated, but then we're not focusing on front end. So that is what I mean there. So now with that said, when we come to our video routes, remember we're getting file name. So we'll now add IP, right? So bingo, like that. And then come back here to this thing called stream, right? So on stream, what then do we expect to get? We expect to get const IP request.params.ip. So I can now console log it. Let's just console log it for now. Console.log IP. And then let's run this file here for our HTML. So let me just run it in Google Chrome, so to avoid having tons of browsers opened, let's just have one browser. Let's just keep it with one browser. Yes, close all tabs, come back here, Google Chrome, and then come here, localhost, which is 5500. So we have that thing there. So obviously this thing is not streaming properly because we are not deleted. Let's get the video ID, not video ID, the video file path, the file path. We'll get the file path and we update that file path. And then our stream should work just fine. So that shouldn't be a problem. Right. So I don't even want to play this thing. Let me even mute this thing. Right. So now what then we do is we expect our IP address to be logged out here. As we're getting the error that the video is not there. As you can see, we're getting this IP address. Right. So now that we're getting this IP address, what we're gonna use is we're gonna use this package called, I think, npm ip-info, something like that. We're gonna use this package ip-info, which will get us information about the IP address, right? And this might not be the best approach with regards to sending this IP address, so on and so forth, but then we're just trying to replicate the situation. So I can just Control-C for now to kill the server to install this package, and not my terminal not wanting to respond like last time. So if it doesn't want to respond, I'm not gonna wait on it. We'll spin up another terminal and even kill that other one. So we come here, say cd desktop, cd junior, and then cdyt, and then cdyt backend, and then I'll say npm I, and then I'll just paste what is ip-info. I believe it's that correct. It's correct, ip-info, right? So that should install. And then let's try and kill this one. There we go. Right. Now that should be installing. And let's wait for a second for that. And then come back here. So how this thing works while that is installing, it's very, very simple. Is you can just basic use. We throw it like this, an IP, and then we get its result, if that makes sense. It's very, very, very easy and intuitive. Nothing really complicated with this thing. So I can come back here on our video controller, say import IP info from IP dash info, and then we'll say IP info dot function, and within the function I can give IP, and I can give it like that. Hopefully that should work. And then say .then, and then res. Let's console.log that response, and then let's catch any trailing errors. And then console.log any trailing errors. Alright. And then that should work. Let's run this thing. We say npm run dev. And then our browser should be complaining here, not finding the video.
Welcome back, guys, to another video. So
I just want to kill that. I don't want that to be running. So as you can see, we're getting this. Okay, so what's happening here? We're getting the country, which is that, the province, nothing. Let's use another IP. I don't know if it's that IP, or maybe it's just this module. Try another IP address. Let's see if we can get more data about this thing. So I can come in here and then replace this with that. And then let's see. So once the browser is loaded, we should get some good data there. So let's refresh this, and then let's see what this thing gives back to us. So we're still getting this thing, eh? Okay, so what we'll use is another module called IP info finder. I think maybe there's a problem with this one. So IP dash info dash finder. We'll make use of this one, right? I don't know if it's that package that was giving me troubles. So let's come here, npmi dash IP dash info dash finder. Right, so now this package should be more doable for us, which we then can come here and import, and we'll say to this thing IP info finder, and then move there, remove this. No, we don't have to kill that IP, but then we say IP info, how does this module work, and we say get IP. Let's just copy this, let's copy that. It should be reliable with TypeScript support, and then we get that, and then we just throw in the IP variable that we got there, and then we throw in that data. That should be reliable. So npm run dev, let's see how that works. Right, and then my browser should automatically send a request to this thing, hopefully, but if it doesn't, we'll refresh there by the browser. Or let's just do it, let's just refresh, go refresh there by the browser, refresh, and IP info is not defined. What is this thing saying? It should be IP info like that. Yep, it's not defined indeed. Right, so kill that, because we copied directly from the documentation of that IP info finder, so hence we got that silly problem there. So that's not a huge thing to worry about. So now we have that, and then let's refresh on our browser. Let's mute this thing, and then you can see that we're getting information. This one is working just fine. So now what we'll do is we'll have this kind of logic running as a middleware, so that whenever this function runs, we will definitely add this IP to our views, and then obviously the views will be counted based on the number of IP addresses that we have there, right? And then from there we can definitely do a lot with this data, right? So now what then I want to do is so we have this data there, and then we have our video model, right? So we want to increment this there, right? So I'll come in here, my model. Do I have to add as a middleware? Let me think about this properly. So if add as a middleware, it makes no difference to me adding there by the controller, right? But then for middleware, let's just adhere to, and then we'll say ip.middleware.js, right?
Welcome back, guys, to another video. So today
Let's kill
we're gonna.
this. I don't want this to be run. Let's even close this browser. Right, we don't want that to running, right? So now what I want to do is we'll have that as a middleware, ip.middleware, and then I can just now bring from my controller, I can bring all this information to my that, and then also copy that import, and we should be good to go. And then we'll edit this thing. So what then do we want to do, right? Is we come in here, we want to get add this IP address to our views count, but then we don't want to add duplicate IP addresses. That's something that we'll adhere to on this one, right? So we'll just do this, and also export const add IP, and we'll say request and request a response, and then the next function, right? So basically we'll run this const, our IP will be coming from those params, request.params.ip, so the same thing. And then we get the IP info, we say IP info that get IP info, and then we pass in that IP dot then, and then we get the data, which then the data, what then do we want to do with it, right? So now first things first, I want to make sure that I don't have this IP within my database. So I can now first get the video. Let me think about this properly. Okay, so you realize that this file name that we have, right? This file name or this file path, which in this route we said it's the file name, right? You realize that that file name is unique, so we can query our database based on that file name, right? And that is something that we have access to within here. Like I say, const file name is equal to request dot params dot file name. So now I can query my video model, say video model, import that dot say const video is equal to await, say video model dot find one, right, based on the file name, which is that file name, right? So now with that said, we get that file name, right? And then we realize within this video model we have views, right, which is an array, right? And then what I want to do is I want to say const is IP existing. So I'll now come say or basically I can replace this what is this views array. I can replace it very easily without even doing a lot. I can say video dot views dot map, right? And then we'll say view and then idx. So now what we do is within this view it'll be like IP addresses, right? So if view, let's just say IP, but then it will clash with that variable. It's fine. So we'll say view, if view is equal to my IP, right? And then I'll just keep that view there. Else, what then do I do? That means that I want to add this thing, if that makes sense. It means that it doesn't exist, right? So hopefully I'm doing this properly. So we'll also validate this, right? And then this, we now have a new IP array, right? Updated one. And then I can now come say video dot views is equal to IP, the new IP array. And then we can now come in here. We don't even need this IP data. This IP data will need if data needed by its count, like based on location. So we can now say here to this thing, video model dot find one and update. When I find one and update by file name, which is that file name, and then when I update the video and new is equal to true, and then that will give an error doc, and then if there is an error, what then we return a response.status of 500.json, and then we say failed to add IP address. And then what then we do, if that worked, we say response.status of 200. No, if that works, because it's a middleware, we'll then silo it down to the next, right? So hopefully this will work as a middleware. Now let's test this thing out. We go to our video route. So now within that video routes, we can just copy this, paste that there, paste that there, change this to IP middleware, change that, add IP, and then we add this and say add IP. All right. So moment of truth, guys. So let's see if that works. So I can come in here, that thing is running, and also my localhost is running. Localhost 5500 should be running. We have that stream should work. So let's wait for this thing to stream this thing. And then, okay, so that is, why did this thing take time to, okay. So here we're getting errors. Why are we getting errors with regards to authenticate? Oh yeah, there's 2 authenticates imported. All right, it's not a problem. So npm run dev, but then I believe that middleware should have run if this video started streaming. That makes sense. So let's see if that data is added there. All right, so we go to views. So refresh this. I'll close that. Okay, so it says await. Okay, we have to async, so that middleware broke on us because we didn't async, right? So async that. Now we should be good to go. So run that, and then our server should be running up and running now. And then wait for MongoDB connection. Refresh this, and then all those requests, everything should have been sent by now. So now let's go to our MongoDB. Refresh this, and then let's see if our views also got added, given an IP address. So we can come in here, that thing is not added, right? So let's fix this middleware, right? So now what I want to do is I just want to console.log video, right?
Welcome back, guys, to another video. So today
Let's
we're
come
gonna
back
be
here.
working on a YouTube backend clone.
I don't want this thing to be running. So what's wrong with my middleware? It looks like my middleware is not running. Interesting. npm run that. I don't want to have tons and tons of browsers opened. Just want to have one browser open. Let's reopen this thing here. And we say localhost 5500. And the stream should start. And then I'll just mute that. Come to my terminal. And we can see that my views are not getting incremented. Right. That's not a problem. So what we then do is we can see that obviously we're getting the data by file path, the file name. That's 100%. So errors are arising when we are trying to map here, right? So let's come with the logic that would work with this thing, right? So basically I want to loop through these views, right? Check if the view exists, not the view but then the IP exists. If it exists, I don't want to do anything. I want to keep that. And if it doesn't exist, then that's when I want to change it, right? So why is this thing not working? Now this is what I can do. First things first. So I can say if video dot views dot length is equal to 0. I can say video dot views dot push. So this is when we have no views, and I can push the IP. Easy money. And then I can come in here, and after that run that next function. All right, and I can just do that, and then else. That means that the is views right there, right? So now what then we want to do is we want to get the index of that, and then basically if that thing IP address exists, then we don't add, and then so on and so forth. So we can get say const idx, and we can say views dot our video, it should be video dot views dot include and this include we pass in IP address, right? And then or we can say index of, right? So now what we can do is we can just console.log. Before we do anything, we can console log idx, but then also take this person to the next, right? So now we have that server rerunning, right? And then we can refresh this bad boy here, mute that, and then we should get a 0, because you can see we're getting 0 with regards to other one, because the idx, it means that the index is a 0. So if I refresh this, because remember we're sending in the same IP address, right? So the index is 0. We expect that because it's only one element. So if I come here to views, I have that IP address there. But then now let's bring in a new IP address which this browser doesn't know, or not the browser, but then our data model doesn't have, right? So when I switch this IP address, it's coming from a new place. There we go. Now with that coming from a new place, I can refresh this. And with that refresh, let's see what output we get, right? So let me just also same time mute this thing. Let's see. Why is now my browser delaying? So we can see we're getting -1s, right? And that -1 that we're getting, that tells us that that IP address does not exist, right? So when we get -1, it does not exist. When we get a specific number, and then it means that it exists, right? So what then do we do? Is we come here to our IP middleware. So now we check this IDX, right? That if IDX is equivalent to -1, what then do we want to do? Is we want to come in here, say video.views.push, and want to push what? The IP, because it does not exist. And then from there, I just use the same query. Right, we use that same query, and I can kill that. And then after that query is done, we push them to the next what we call to the next push them to the right route, so this middleware exits out. So we run that, refresh that, and then let's refresh within here. We should be able to update everything properly and have 2 IP addresses, my understanding, right? So let's see. Right there we have 2 IP addresses, right? So now we are getting this data, and we're making sure that even this middleware runs 1,000 number of times. We are validating all this information appropriately. If we were to run through this, we get the user's IP, we get the file name, we query for the video, we check if the length of the views is equal to 0, and if that's the case, I can just randomly push whatever IP address I got. But then if it's not equal to 0, there is a potential possibility that this person already has viewed this video, and we just want to keep it as you view once and then we increment once, if that makes sense. You can view a number of times, but then we won't be adding this a lot of times. And then now, if then that's the case, then it means that the next time, if this doesn't, if this condition is not met, it means that this IP is potentially new, and we do have other views there. So we want to validate this IP address, that is it there within our array. If it's not there, we will get a -1, and then if we get a -1, then that's where we add that array, because not that array, but then the IP, because it means that it doesn't exist. But then if an index is given forward, then we don't want to do anything, because that means that that IP already exists. Right. So that's what we do. So here we say if, then that's the case. However, then that's where we need I can now come say, because if that's the case, I can now say return that, and then we return that. But then however, if then an index is given, then we can just say next. Right. So this is how basically we'll be adding this data there. Right. So now the final part, right, we want to get this views count, and we want to handle this data, that we want to get the views by location, blah 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 blah, right? Depending on the locations that's there. So that is just some simple JavaScript. Not simple. I believe it will take maybe some remembering of some few things and playing around with JavaScript knowledge, right? So what then we do is, that is a controller that we need. It's no more needed here. So we come here and then we say to this controller, we'll just say get views by location, and then we pass in the request, the response, right? So get views by location. So basically, first things first, we get the data, and there's really nothing that we need to populate. Let's see the video. We don't care about the comments and everything, so we won't populate those things. We're interested in the views, right? We'll say get data, and then we'll say await video model dot find one, and we'll find one. We'll say async, and then we'll find one by its ID underscore ID, and that ID will be thrown to our params. We'll say const params is equals to await, but then request dot params dot ID, and then we'll say ID, not params, ID, and then we throw in that ID, right? So now we'll just, for now, let's just return this data, return a response.status of 200.json data, right? So we haven't given the appropriate thing. We'll get there. So we'll come to here to videos, route, and then we'll say router.get, and then we'll say API / video dash views dash count dash location, right? So here we're getting response, or let's just say videos count, and then we'll embed also the total count, basically, if that makes sense. So say controller dot get views by location, request the response, right? So now I can come in here, and then we replace this, and then once we replace that, if I send that, I should get my data. We're getting, oh, I didn't send the what is this? We didn't even set the ID. We didn't set that ID there, and we need to get the video. Let's go to videos. We get one video here. Let's not forget that 7. We grab that, and then go to that. We come there. We should get the data. Bingo. So now we have this IP addresses that we want to interact with. So the data that we want to interact with is this, right? So here we can say cost total underscore views is equals to data dot views dot length. So this is the first, basically the whole total views, if that makes sense. Let's say const the results is equals to, and then we'll say total view total underscore views is that, and then we'll say total view. So this is the data that we'll be sending back to the client, right? So now that should refresh. Our MongoDB should connect in a few seconds. There we go. So now I can send this, and then we expect 2 to be given back to us, right? The total views currently it's 2, right? But then now we need to see these locations and get the total views based on location. So what do I mean? So we use that IP finder thing. We'll say import IP info, and then we'll say from IP finder, IP info finder. And then what then we do is scroll down, and then first things first, we need to get basic information about this thing. So if I were to show you what do I mean by this is, okay, let's think about this. So we want to pass through each and everything and get the data of it, right? And then we can just say const let's say data dot views dot map, and then we'll say view, let's say IP, and then IDX, and then this would be const location underscore view underscore data. Right. So now what then do we do is we'll use this IP finder, IP info, hopefully get IP, say IP info dot get IP info, and then we throw that IP, and then we say dot then, hopefully this would work, and then the data, and that is the data that we wanna return back, and then catch. If there is an error, we'll just return an empty object. Right, just do it like that, and then hopefully let's console log this thing out. Let's see if this would have the information about this thing, right? So my server should restart in a few, and then connection to MongoDB in a few as well. There we go. So now we send this request. Let's see, here we're getting undefined 2 times, right? Why are we getting undefined? That's because we are returning within this, and there's nothing returned within this one, I believe, right? I can say const let the data that I'm trying to return, right? Or let's just say info that I'm trying to return, and then I'll say info is equal to data, and then say info is equal to that empty object, and then I return info. Hopefully that works if my JavaScript serves me well. Hopefully that should work. Let's try it out. But then if it doesn't work, we try other methods. Always must have plan B, guys. Always must have plan B. So let's see if this works so that we can figure out how we can play around with this data and manipulate this data. So now I send that request, and then now we're getting undefined as well. Interesting. So this thing is not working. I'm pretty much sure the data we're getting it without a doubt, because if I were to console, okay, so this is what we can do, guys. This is what we can do. We don't have to stress. So we'll say const location view data. We'll give that, right? And then what we then do is we then say data dot views dot for each, right? So we don't have to create a new array, and then that is the IP, that is the IDX, right? And then we say IP info that get info of this IP address, and dot then we get that res data, and then that res data I want to push to location view data dot push. I want to push this res data, and then catch any trailing error. That's where now I can now push location view data, I can now push an empty object, and then let's console log that location view data, right? So here we're playing around with JavaScript, seeing how we can manipulate this thing, right? So don't worry, guys. Let's see, let's send that request. Let's see, that request is sent, but then I'm not getting any log out. npm run dev. Okay, let's wait for this MongoDB connection, and we get that MongoDB connection, and then we send that the request, and then we get that. We're getting an empty array. Why is this, guys? Why is this the case? Why is this thing doing this to me? Okay, so let's just console log res data. All right, let's see what's happening here. Why is this thing doing this to me? Why is it not doing what I needed to do. So we send that, and we can see the data, but then it's not getting pushed to our array. Interesting. Very, 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 very interesting. Very, very interesting. We can see the data, but then it's not getting pushed. And why is that the case? Why is that the case? Okay, let's think about this properly. Right. So remember, this thing would run. So why am I not getting this data, guys? I'm trying to think. Right. Let's see, because the aim is to push this data into this array, right? And then we have object of that. And then based on, say, for example, country, right? We can use object.keys to get that country, right? And then we create somewhat like that. And then from there, we can manipulate. If I could get this thing into my array, and then why is this thing not pushing into my array? My goodness. This should work, hey? This should work. This is just me being desperate, changing that to a let. With me knowing that this won't work, to be honest. Yeah. That won't work. This is just desperation now. Changing const to let. I don't see that working. Let's send that request. And let's see. Exactly. I never expected that to work, to be honest. I really, really never expected that to work. Okay, so let's try and see what's happening here. So we say location data, and then we push res data. But then why isn't that getting the data that we need? Okay, interesting. Let's return location, data, something, see something. Even though I might get an empty array there, exactly as much as I thought. Okay. Let's try and think a bit. So there's normal things that you will definitely come across as developers, guys. So it's a matter of finding out a solution here. Let's think about this properly. Oh my goodness. Okay. We could do things. I don't want to make this middleware big, right? This IP middleware, right? So on this IP middleware, when we add this user, right, we can add based on their country and then increment accordingly. So we can do that ourselves, have like objects, if that makes sense. If we're having problems here, that's a good solution. So what do I mean by this is we have this IP info thing, right? So before I add, we would have arrays of objects, right? And within that arrays of object, I can now make the object of maybe say Brazil, colon, and then 1. What does that mean? That means that I'm adding the number of people that are viewing in Brazil, right? And if that's not the case, then obviously it will be here where we have to check the country, find the equivalent country, increment that, update that. That is a solution. Literally, that is a solution. So what do I mean by this? I still have that IP info finder, right? There we go. So instead of just roughly adding this, right, we can find the data. We have this data here, right? This res data. And this res data, what is it coming with? It's coming with this country thing, right? So what then we do is we now say, yeah, we now say views video dot views dot push. How then do you want to push? I want to push res data dot country, and let's just add it here, say const country is equals to, so I'll say res data dot country, and say country is equal to res data dot country, and then we'll say country, and this country would be that country that we got, and that would be that, and then the views we now add, that would be 1, because that is when we have no views. So obviously we can now say it with confidence that 1, right? And then with that said, I believe even if I were to not add it within there, that callback function, I can just add it there within that callback function, it's fine, and then just do that, and then just update that. Now that should work, right? And then within this catch, we'll handle that, right? So now what I can do is, we have that working, and then let's just try and stream this data, not the data but the video, so that we can get the IP. So we have that stream should work, blah 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 blah, and we're not getting any errors there, right? So now if I come to this, let's refresh there. Let's refresh that, and let's try and empty out all these things. I believe I can be able to edit this array and empty out this thing, so I can have 0 views. Instead of deleting the video, I can just delete elements there, and then come in here, delete that element as well, right? So now we have 0 views, right? So I can come in here, refresh this thing, and that ought to have worked, I believe. So let's refresh. We didn't get any errors within our terminal, so we're looking good. So now we come here, refresh that, and then let's view that. This is still throwing me my IP. What is happening here? Because if video.length.views is equal to 0, then we have that. We have a push, and then we push country, and then views equal to 1 of that country, and then we update. Then we good, right? So why is this thing not breaking on us? Why is this thing not breaking on us? So we have that, okay, and let's rerun this. 5500, and that should now mute that, and then we refresh this, and then once that is refreshed, let's see, it's adding. Why is it adding this information? Why is this thing not adding this information? Because we're not coming here and there. Oh my goodness. So there's few problems that we have. This method of mine is not wanting to work. The other one is not working. And the other one was going to be the simplest one. And this one, we know this works, incrementing and validating things, right? But then the problem that we're having here, if this could work, right? So let's see something. So this thing doesn't want to update doesn't want to push. Why doesn't it want to push? So you can just say,
welcome back, guys, to another video. So today we got
right. So why is this thing not pushing? Why is this thing not pushing? Oh my goodness. So this is irrelated to what I need, man. Like this is really irrelated. This is really irrelated. This is irrelated to what I need. Why is this thing not pushing? It's very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. But then, not to make this video long and everything, I'll just end it here. And on the next part of the YouTube backend clone, what are we left with? We just left with this view by count. Here we just, oh my goodness, why is this thing not working? It really doesn't make sense to me. It really doesn't make sense. Let's see. So this could be the issue because this is running, it's not even running asynchronously from what I'm understanding. And I believe this API I found I can npm API dash info finder. I believe I can run that asynchronously. Async info is equals to await. I believe I can do this. And then pass in the IP. Right. So I believe I can do that. And then location data.push. And then we push the info. And then I believe I can run that like that. Let's go see. Yep, I don't even have to check that. I believe I can. And then let's run that. We're not getting any errors, right? So let's wait for this request to be made. Let's see what's happening here. So the delay gives me a bit of hope that it's busy handling all those things that it should be handling. So that gives me a bit of hope. Let's see. Pushing the info and then pass that. Okay, so this is now taking longer than expected. The server, let's rerun the server. Okay, let's see what problems we're having here. Right, so I can send this, and we're still getting this thing as like that. Why are we getting this empty array? Meanwhile, I'm pushing out. It really doesn't make sense. What could be the bug here? What could be the bug here? What could be happening now? Okay, so I don't want to make this video extremely long because of this part. So what I'll then do is we'll handle this part when we handle the video, not the video, but then when we handle the error handling, we'll handle that part. So we can write this as our to-do. Right. So, but then let's handle this part, which is subscribing and unsubscribing and then watch later. Right. So, which is something that you can do quick and easy. So the playlist is basically a list of videos, right? I can now come const and then say, let me just come here, copy this because I don't want to write, and then cancel out all these things. The owner is fine, but then the video, that's what we want to change. We say videos because it's a playlist, and then say type of schema.object schema types. Hold on. So it's a video which should be an array, and this array of type schema dot types dot object ID, and we have to ref the video model, and I believe I named it video, right? And then now that's what we reference, and then now that's the video, and then we can also now get the category or the name of the playlist. So we can say playlist name, which is a type of string, and required true. And then we say playlist name is required, right? And then that should be our schema, and then we say playlist schema, and then we replace this, and then we say playlist. But then if any of you do have a solution with regards to why that is not working, then comment down below. Definitely will fix that up. And then the rest is proper, right? So we can now come here to our video, because it's still the video controller, right? And then we can now say create playlist, say create playlist, which is our request, then our response, and then it's taking the owner, which will be running a middleware for the token. So that will be the owner of the playlist, and then we'll say request dot token. And then what then we do is we then async first of all, and then change this to be a playlist model, playlist model, right? And then what then we do is we import that playlist model. I can now just say playlist, change this one to playlist, and then update that to that, since that one is not in use. And then what then we do is we just wanna add this, create this new playlist. I can now say const new playlist, and by default the videos can be empty, but then we're just creating a playlist, right? So we can say new playlist is equal to new playlist model, and then here we have the owner, which is coming from the token dot underscore ID. And when we create a playlist, it will be empty, right? And then we have playlist name, so this would be coming from, we'll take this from the params. So say name, say request dot params dot playlist dot name, let's say dot name, right? And then we'll say playlist name, I have to copy this name exactly, very long. Come here, say playlist name is equals to that name. And then what then we do next is we now come in here and say const saved playlist as equals to await new playlist dot save. And if that's the case, we async, and then we return a response dot status of 200.json saying that the playlist has been created. Playlist has been created. So now we can add it to this playlist. So now this should work just fine. So we now can add videos to this playlist. You can say const, not const, but then add to playlist. So we now say a request, a response, and remember we need to know the user of this thing. So you can say token request dot token, and then we need to know or to query for, and we need to know the ID of the video. So you can say video is equals to request dot params dot ID, and then now we can make a query. You can now say we have the video already, because remember the playlist, we are adding the video ID, right? We can now say video, not video ID, not video model, but then playlist model dot find one and update, and we want to find one by the owner. You can say owner is equals to the token dot underscore ID, and then what then do we do is we want to update or push to this playlist, to this videos part, right? And then we say dollar push, and then we want to push to videos, where we push in the video because it's an ID, right? And then now that should be it. And then we now say new as equals to true. We get that callback doc, and then if there is any error, we return a response.status of 200.json, and we say network error, and we said failed to add to playlist, and then else we return a response.status of 200.json, and then we say video added to playlist. And I made a mistake here saying 200 by the error, should be 500, and that should be adding to the playlist. So with regards to subscribing, that is part of we'll say user.controller, right? So subscribing, we need this user model, right? But then let's test out this playlist thing to add it to this playlist. Let's go to video. Let's say router.get, and then we say /API /video dash playlist dash create, and it will take in the name, I believe. Let's go to video controller. When we create, we take in the name, right? And then now we go back to our routes, take in that name, say request response, and then controller dot create playlist, and then request response. And then now we want to add to playlist. I can say router.get because it will be coming from the params API /playlist dash add, and then we'll say request a response and we throw in the controller dot add to playlist request a response, and not forgetting that the ID of the video, because if we look into the controller, when we add, we take in from the ID. So let's test this route out. So let's bring it side by side so that I can see this URLs. Bring that side by side, and then come back here, and then we'll say API. We want to first create a playlist API video dash play list, and then dash create. So, and then the name will give it node, let's say node, right? And then I have my token already, but then we also have to run those middlewares. Remember, we have to run the authenticate middleware in order to create or to know the person. You have to run the authenticate middleware, right? So now that should be good. We should be good to go. My server should be up and running in a few, and just kill that ourselves, and then let's rerun this, right? So let's see, wait for Mongo connection, and then I can send this, right? So we're creating a playlist called name. So let's get our token. Let's go to sign in. What's the sign in? And I believe my sign in should have a valid token because it stays for 365 days, so it should still be valid. So I can now come here and say x auth dash token, and then we add that, and then I run that. So playlist created successfully. Let's go to our MongoDB. Let's refresh that. We should see our playlist model, and we should see node there, right? So that shouldn't be a hassle, right? And then we come in here, say playlist, and then you can see we have our playlist called node. So now let's add to this playlist. Let's get our video. we come here to our video, we get that ID of this video, right? And then here we can change this part, add that, make sure we don't have that object ID again. Exactly, I thought as much. So we remove that object ID because remember that other time it gave us problems. And then we say playlist as one word, playlist dash add, right? And then that should add network error failed to add to playlist, right? Interesting. Now we said API playlist dash add, and then authenticate, right? So now why are we getting that error? Interesting. So let's go to our playlist controller. Let's close this, close that, close that, close that, bring that controller here, bring this request here. So when we add to playlist, we get a token the underscore ID, find one and update, and then we push to videos, the video. So what is the error that we got here? So let's just run that. So let's see. So let's also add the error so that we can see what error are we actually getting on this addition or adding of playlist. Let's go to our middleware quick and make sure that we are referencing playlist. We're referencing the video. Cool. And it's videos. And in there, I have videos just to make sure that all silly errors are not affecting us. All right, so we know that no silly error that we cannot see at this point, unless you guys saw something that I didn't see. So I send that, and the error says value object ID. Oh yeah, there's a space here, right? So I believe that's the main issue. So if I add that video added to playlist, there was a space. If you guys saw, there was a space here, so I just had to close in that space. Those are just those silly errors. And then let's see now within our playlist, we refresh this, we go to our playlist, we should have that video. And since we have only one video, we can only add one video, right? So you can see we go to our videos, we have that video added there, right? So now that's how we will create our playlist. And then next we want to deal with regards to subscribing to this channel. So I'll let you guys handle that. I'll let you guys it'll be somewhat of a challenge. So I'll set up a repo for this thing, right? And I want you guys to make pull requests to the repo that I'll make, and having added the subscribing and unsubscribing, and also adding watch later. So it's somewhat like a challenge that you guys have to do, and I'll definitely look into those pull requests. So do that for me. So what you guys should do, since we've gone through all these things, right, and we've done this, so what I want you guys to do, this is something that I'll also add on the repo, right, as to what's happening with that problem. But then what I want you guys to do is the subscription part. This will be somewhat of a challenge for you guys. I'll make a GitHub repository which you guys must make pull request on, right? So, but then if you guys like this series on the YouTube backend clone, consider liking, subscribing, because I'll be making more bangers on backend development. Spoiler alert, I told you I'll be doing security with Node.js, and I might look into some other cool clones. I don't want to mention a lot, but then just be on the lookout. Ring that notification bell so that you can get updated as to all the time when I upload. Goodbye, guys.